G'day legends, I hope that you're all well. Now, someone said yesterday I like Willie in a jacket, so you ask, you shall receive. You have got Willie in a jacket. Now, it's not lost to me that the video yesterday where I talked about Ukrainian and Russian propaganda going into overdrive recently has got restricted, along with seemingly my account and much of my other content. So I'm not sure when you'll see this or how it will look. Maybe it's perfect, maybe it's shocking, I don't know. So we're going to have a look into social media's role to play and the censorship here. And also yesterday's video is available on my Patreon with none of the censorship. And I think I'm going to have to start doing that as this isn't going brilliantly for me. But today what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the maps. Then we're going to talk about online bots, their influence from a mathematics study, social media creating narratives, or at least pushing narratives. But we're going to look at these changes. And really the only change we've seen are Russia's further advance through Bakhmut. So let's have a look at that. So of course the map here, we have Ukraine, capital of Kyiv in the center. Red areas that were occupied by Russia since 22, and purple since 14, Crimea, Donetsk here. Green areas liberated by Ukraine. So we're going to come down here into Bakhmut. Now this is somewhere we've seen a lot of fighting over the past really 11 months, but we have seen some major steps in the past few days. So yesterday, this is what we saw. The day before, this is what we saw. So we saw a lot of push up, and we've seen further push by the Russian forces, significantly Wagner Group in this region, up to this road here. And that is really the only change we've seen on the map. It's being reported that Bakhmut is still holding. So let's have a look at some other maps and what they are showing. So this is the ISW. Now, the ISW now is showing more of a picture that the deep state is showing. If we take this road in the circle and this one through here, more of that picture. It just wasn't as quick to update as we saw yesterday. So this was yesterday's of the ISW and today's. So we've seen a Russia push to the south from the north, significantly down through these blocks further. So let's have a look also at a Russian sources map of this area showing the percentages here. So this is the grey zone at 8%, Russia's at 84%, and Ukraine holding 8% of the region. Now, of course, this is a Russian sources map that is showing very different to some of the other maps. But one of the funny things it's showing is this dip down in here, which if we see where this V dips right down past this road. So it's saying right down into here is being held by, well, at least is grey zone, which none of the other maps are showing, which I think is interesting. But as we see, this dotted outline is the city itself and the region in here. So I use this to show how much of the city is actually under either grey zone or Russian control. What I think is interesting, seeing how this is being reported throughout. But the city has been destroyed unbelievably. So this is from a Russian group. We have this photograph here of these murals on the side of these buildings, and these are the same buildings now. Well, at least one of them, this one, has been downed completely here. Now, Russian sources saying this was a Ukrainian strong point. They give nothing to back that up. I have nothing to back that up. So we will take it with a grain of salt, but it does show that level of destruction here. As well, we have the Rybar sources map, which I think the best way to get an idea on the ground is Rybar with deep state, and we'll have a look. So this road that has the one through the middle, it is showing very, very similar, almost the exact same. If anything, deep state is showing more advancement by Russia around where this road goes to the right here, some level of more advancement. But deep state is showing, we can only just see this road through, is showing a different situation than the ISW of claimed control all the way down that road. But that'll be the end really of where we look at the maps for this video. Actually, no, one more video here of Ukrainian soldiers here in Bakhmut being reported loading into their wounded into the back of a armoured personnel carrier here, but just the number of guys here as well. So the situation here is dire, it is extreme, where they've seen thousands upon thousands lost on both sides in this conflict in this area for what we got told was not tactically or strategically important city from both sides. We got told that from both sides, but have poured these men into the meat grinder absolutely of this area. But that's the end of the mapping. I online do my absolute best to try and be as unbiased as possible, but to be completely is sometimes impossible. But there are propaganda accounts that can laugh at young soldiers losing their lives, completely just make things up, and will make millions upon millions of dollars. There is obvious bias in the algorithm and bots at play. So we're going to look into an unbiased university study from the mathematics wing. With everything, this gets politicized and you have to choose a side. So I'm ready I'm ready for it. Send your best hate this way. Now, a quick side note on this. If you want to see how much a channel is making on YouTube, just go to socialblade.com, type in the username, and it will show you. Now, typically, this is closer, the figure is closer to the upper middle amount of the figure it shows. Now, that doesn't take into account channels with host-read ads. Now, host-read ads typically pay $16 per 1,000 views. So $100, 600 USD, $1 million is 16,000 USD, plus their Patreon, merch, all these. And as you'll see with this, you see a lot of accounts making millions upon millions off this. What it doesn't take into account is demonetized videos and restricted channels. So if you want to support your boy, links below. Dirty plug. But with these sorts of figures, you can see why leaning into the narrative and avoiding restrictions that suits the advertisers is very tempting. Now, I completely get that this is just business. Private companies can do what they want, and advertisers have to choose an audience. If McDonald's has sanctioned Russia, why would they put their ad next to a video with anything to do with the Russian side? This is just how the world of media now works. We, and I'll include myself in this, all the way up to CNN, Fox, whatever, we live off clicks. And who ultimately pays for those clicks is advertisers. So it has to please them to get paid. So just look at how major media has changed their reporting over the past couple of years against certain ideological militia groups. A few days after the initial Russian invasion, YouTube deleted 70,000 videos and 9,000 accounts related to the war in Ukraine for what they say violating content guidelines. Now, no specifics on what actual violations were given, but it was said that there were Russian state-funded media or Russian state actors, as well as anyone who goes against the specific major event policy. So from a spokesman at YouTube, we have a major violent events policy, and that applies to things like denial of major events, everything from the Holocaust to, and of course, what's happening in Ukraine is a major violent event. And so we have used that policy to take unprecedented action. But precedent action against significantly one side in this, but private company, they can do what they want. Also, workers across Google had been urging YouTube to take additional punitive measures against Russian channels, accusing them of spreading false narratives about the Ukrainian leadership and civilian deaths during the war. Anyone who sort of works in this space and who sort of has to go towards the algorithm knows that any content that doesn't fit those sort of narratives gets absolutely smashed. Sometimes for a good reason, sometimes absolutely not for any good reason. So let's talk about social media having an influence on how you receive and access information, and ultimately how then you will feel about it and your opinions. As I actually had a sit-down meeting with these mathematics, like geniuses, whose team studied online bots and found some very interesting things. That said, the backlash his team got online meant that no one would actually talk to me on the record. The full paper will be absolutely linked below, and I'll give a summary of it, but you should absolutely go and read it, especially before you send so much hate my way. Now, the screenshots I will show you are the paper itself, but I have used ChatGPT to help me summarize some areas of this and some terms also. But those summaries will only be in my notes, not on the screen. So the introduction summarized from ChatGPT. This summary looks at how bots, which are automated accounts, are influencing online conversation about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. The authors find that bot-like accounts have significant information flows to non-bot accounts, and pro-Russian non-bot accounts are the most influential overall. Bot activity drives an increase in conversations surrounding angst and work governance, and has a significant relationship with non-bot sentiment in both directions. This research helps us understand how malicious campaigns operate in modern-day warfare. So in this paper, researchers analysed 5,200,000 tweets, retweets, quote retweets, replies posted on Twitter between February and March, containing the hashtags I stand with Putin, I stand with Russia, I support Russia, I stand with Ukraine, I stand with Zelensky, and I support Ukraine. So they say we found that 60 to 80% of tweets using the hashtags we studied came from bot accounts during the first weeks of the war. We found that 90.16% of accounts fell into the pro-Ukraine category, while only 6.8% fell into the pro-Russian category. So some terms you need to know before we jump actually into this. You need to know what AstroTurf bot is. So an AstroTurf bot is a type of social media bot that is designed to mimic human behavior and create an illusion of grassroots support for a particular cause. Now, this is a very effective way of doing it. You can't tell that these are actually bots. So CAP, Credibility Assessment and Prediction. CAP Score, which is Credibility Assessment and Prediction. This is a method for assessing the credibility of online news articles or sources. It uses machine learning algorithms to analyze various features of a news article, such as its content, style, and metadata, and produces a score that reflects the likelihood that the article is credible or not. Also, the Granger casualty. Now, this is a statistical concept that measures the causal relationship between two time series variables. What we know is both sides in the Ukrainian conflict use online information environment to influence geopolitical dynamics and sway public opinion. Russian social media pushes narratives around their motivation, and Ukrainian social media aims to foster and maintain external support from Western countries, as well as promote their military efforts while undermining the perception of the Russian military. So let's jump into this. This may get confusing. I apologize in advance. So here we have the start of this interaction of bots and humans in discussion of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, by aggregating some account groups, we find significant information flows from bot-like accounts to non-bot accounts, with behavior differing between sides. Pro-Russian non-bot accounts are most influential overall, with information flows to a variety of other account groups. No significant outward flows exist from pro-Ukrainian non-bot accounts, or non-bots, with significant flows from pro-Ukrainian bot accounts into pro-Ukrainian non-bot accounts. So what this is saying is that there is flow from pro-Ukrainian bots to non-bot accounts, where the Russian side, we see non-bots are incredibly influential, but also going to bot accounts and non-bots. So that real back and forward. Upon the introduction, both sides in the Ukrainian conflict use the online information environment to influence geopolitical dynamics and sway public opinion. Russian social media pushes narratives around their motivation, and Ukraine's social media aims to foster and maintain external support from Western countries, as well as promote their military efforts while undermining the perception of the Russian military. And this is where a lot of these examples we see of gaining support from the West outside, but also undermining the Russian military. Now, if you ask someone sort of on the street who just consumes normal social media, what is the Russian military like? They'll say they're absolutely useless, all conscripts, no idea. Now, there's absolutely that within the Russian military, but there are also very well-trained, good units as well. So absolutely that undermining of their ability is there, but also with a lot of examples of that as well, like the air power. That Russia has not managed to get air power. It is very easy to build perceptions around that, as you know, that is something that has been way under what it should have been. Now, examples include narratives, including allegations that Ukraine was developing biological weapons, which is a big one from the pro-Russian side, that President Volodymyr Zelensky has surrendered. That was right at the beginning. And there was a sustained campaign showing the apparent success of the Ghost of Kiev. Now, some of the information being pushed is genuine and some of it is malicious. It is not easy to discriminate which is which. Now, that is what I try and do here. What information is real, what is not, and what is actually the truth behind it. So we step into then this and a number of graphs. Now, we can observe a significant spike in the bot activity of several bot types on the 2nd and the 4th of March. So we look up here. We look for the 2nd and the 4th of March. So we see significant bot activity pick up. The spike in bot activity on the 2nd of March aligns with Russia's capture of Kherson and aligns with the significant increase in pro-Russian hashtags. This spike is activity due to an increase in activity of pro-Russian bots, likely used by Russian authorities. The spike in bot activity on the 4th of March aligns with when the use of pro-Russian hashtags diminished, but also when Russia captured the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. This spike was due to an increase of activity of pro-Russian bots before being removed, and an increase in activity of pro-Ukrainian bots, likely by pro-Ukrainian authorities in response to Russian bots. So you can just see here these hashtags being used from the beginning of the war, and these huge spikes around significant events. And we can see the hashtag types on the side here, and the overall hourly probability of these picking up during the war as it goes, aligning with the dates at the bottom. Further on this, in all time series figures, we present 5 significant events that provide context for our findings. When the conflict begins, the 24th of Feb, when the fighting in Mariupol begins, the 26th of Feb, when Russia captures Kherson, the 2nd of March, when Russia captures Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the 4th of March, when Ukrainian authorities first attempt to evacuate Mariupol, the 8th of March 22. These events are linked to notable changes in the volumes of related tweets, and in our analysis, we delve deeper to understand how information is flowing. As a result, we learn how bots are influencing the online conversation by measuring what communities are talking about online and how this discussion evolved. So how do they do this? An extension of existing information flow techniques to examine aggregated group activity. We establish statistical significance of information flows between accounts grouped by national lean and account type. The highest information flows are out of the pro-Russian non-bot accounts. Information flows into non-bot account groups and are only significant for a balanced and pro-Ukrainian accounts, with pro-Russian non-bot accounts only exhibiting net outward information flow of information. So I had ChatGPT actually break down what does this mean. Now, the study looked at how different groups of social media accounts share information. They found that pro-Russian non-bot accounts shared the most information. Other groups such as pro-Ukraine balanced accounts shared less information. Overall, pro-Russian non-bot accounts tended to share more information outward than they received inwards. And that is where something like ChatGPT, just to help me and you guys break this down, can really help. With social media influencing things, some of the information space was skewed somewhat. So Twitter's takeover of Russian accounts on the 3rd of March may lead to bias issues within our data, as the activities of these accounts will not be present in our dataset. However, analysis showed that the content spread by these accounts persisted despite the takedown. Now, this is categorizing the accounts and their lean. How do they actually categorize what these accounts were on these graphs that we're looking at? So the query hashtags from each tweet were extracted, and the total number of pro-Ukrainian ending in Ukraine or Zelensky and pro-Russian ending in Russia hashtags were counted and used to establish the national lean of the tweet, so where that tweet falls on the graph. It is a number of pro-Ukrainian query hashtags exceeded that of the pro-Russian hashtags. If the number of pro-Ukrainian query hashtags exceeded that of the pro-Russian hashtags, the tweet was labeled as pro-Ukrainian and labeled as pro-Russian conversely. If the counts were balanced, the tweet was labeled balanced. So we found that 90.16% of all accounts fell into the pro-Ukraine category, while 6.8% fell into the pro-Russian category, and the balanced category contained 3.4%. Now, we'll have a look at this in a second. There is an initial spike with I Stand With Ukraine tweets, which also the most dominant overall. Interestingly, the I Stand With I Support hashtags spike in the 2nd and 3rd of March, just after Russia captured the Ukrainian city Kherson. Now, we believe these spikes are in support of Putin, predominantly due to the presence of bots, as indicated by the increase in overall bot activity around this time. Now, on the 4th of March, we've talked about before, the Twitter removed 100 users who pushed the I Stand With Putin campaign for violating its platform manipulation and spam policy. As we spoke about before, this may lead us to underestimate the impact of these pro-Russian media accounts after this date. Also noting that AstroTurf, as we spoke about in the beginning, you have to remember that AstroTurf is a bot really posing as a human. The AstroTurf cycle is opposite to that of all other types. AstroTurfing accounts are active at the opposite times to the other bot types. There are two potential explanations. Either the AstroTurfing accounts are from different time zone to a majority of the accounts, or the Batometer uses time zone to determine whether an account is astroturfing. So this here at the bottom is the astroturfing, when they're at what hour of the day are the astroturfing accounts actually more active. And we can also see here the national lean. So you can see Ukraine is using more of the astroturfing accounts here compared to the pro-Russian accounts. But we can see that the spammer accounts is used by more pro-Russian. So we see this happening all throughout this study. So Figure 1 at the top shows spikes in bots on 2nd and 4th of March. The spike aligns with Russia capturing Kherson, with the I Stand Russia hashtags were as they were trending. We observed the mean overall Batometer score of active pro-Russian accounts increased 0.53 on the 1st of March to 0.59 on the 2nd, whereas the mean overall score of active pro-Ukrainian accounts decreased from 0.58 to 0.56. So this shows that bots were absolutely present there and had gone up and down in certain areas. On this date, Russia captured the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, but a handful of pro-Russian accounts were removed from Twitter. The mean overall Batometer score of active pro-Russian user accounts significantly increased from 0.53 on the 3rd of March to 0.61 on the 4th of March. And the mean overall Batometer score of active pro-Ukrainian accounts slightly increased from 0.53 0.57 on the 3rd of March to 0.60 on the 4th. As a result, this spike in bot activity is due to the presence of pro-Russian bots before they were removed, but the presence of pro-Ukrainian bots advocating against the pro-Russian accounts. Nonetheless, there is an obvious presence of bots over the duration of the first fortnight after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, I think this is one of the most interesting bits here. The time of day effects the most pronounced for the AstroTurf and other bots. Now, Ukraine uses most commonly the AstroTurf, ones that are posing sort of as a person. You can't tell the difference except for, these machine learning can. This may be because AstroTurf and other bots are pushing campaigns specific to certain countries and hence sharing content aligned with those time zones. Now, the spike in other bots occurs at 10 UTC, which corresponds to 1 p.m. Ukrainian time. Matthews, one of the people doing this test, suggested that noon to 1 p.m. is the most popular time to tweet in any time zone, hence why the other bots were likely to be increasing their engagement in Ukraine, being the most active around this time. So the time when these go out gives who is pushing this information to, because why would you push information at, say, 1 a.m. Australian time? Why would you do that if it's to affect Australians? So you need to look at what time zone these are actually coming out of. Now, furthermore, we can observe consistent spread of bot types for both campaigns. Pro-Russian accounts have a mean CIP score of 0.42, while pro-Ukrainian accounts have a mean score of 0.43. However, the median possibility of an account being an AstroTurf bot is slightly higher for pro-Ukrainian accounts than Russian accounts. The median probability of a self-declared bot is slightly higher for pro-Russian accounts compared to the Ukrainians. And this highlights that Ukrainian accounts may be more utilizing the AstroTurfing in their information warfare, whereas pro-Russian accounts utilizing more of the self-declared bots. So there are a number of figures throughout this as well, and this is why I say you should go and have a look at this and break down these figures as you go. Now, the outwards flow for each aggregated group predominantly falls in the 0 to 0.5 range. However, pro-Russian non-bot and pro-Ukrainian financial, pro-Ukrainian spammer, and pro-Ukrainian failed to classify bots, classifications within their bot structure, net flows tended to be greater. Most intergroup flows for groups with the pro-Ukrainian lean are to other groups with pro-Ukraine lean. So they're going together. Now, number D here lists the 15 highest self-entropy rate values for the aggregated groups, with the top 3 groups all having a pro-Ukrainian lean. So here we go. The entropy rate, pro-Ukraine self-declared, pro-Ukraine AstroTurf, and pro-Ukrainian other, and then Russia failed here. So Russia failed to classify. So the entropy rate of this. Now, what is self-entropy? So self-entropy measures the uncertainty of information contained in the event. So not as blatantly obvious. Pro-Russian non-bot account group has the largest outward information flows and significant flow to a range of other groups, having positive information flow into both pro-Ukraine and balanced accounts. So these not bots are putting information into Ukraine and balanced accounts groups. This indicates that these Russian non-bot accounts influence a variety of user groups with the greatest between group information flows. This may indicate that human-controlled accounts or accounts which appear less bot-like have more influence in our social network, potentially due to their behavior or perception. While the non-bot label is derived from the Botometer score, this label does not mean these accounts are not malicious or automated. Most of the significant information flows between pro-Ukraine account groups is between groups with the same lean. So pro-Ukraine is putting information into pro-Ukraine leaning groups, where the pro-Russian stuff is going into the balanced, because they know they can swing the balanced people, but also into the pro-Ukrainian groups to try and swing some of those people out as well. This may mean indicating that more information flows between the accounts within each of these groups rather than to account in the other groups. Pro-Ukraine groups have the highest level of self-entropy rates, meaning that these groups do not just aggregate information from the other account groups, but influence other accounts within the same group. The balanced account groups show information flows to all other national lean types and connect otherwise disjoint parts of the information flow network. These accounts may act as a bridge for information to move between pro-Russia and pro-Ukrainian accounts. So like we spoke of, these more balanced accounts may be to bring in people who are on that side to a more balanced view, and once they've got them in a balanced view, then they can hit them with the pro view and swing them from completely one side slowly to balance, then onto the other side. So it is a very, very interesting way that this is happening. Yes. So here we go. The interaction of bots and humans discussing the Russian-Ukrainian war. And this is where we see bots having success, is actually interacting to and from. So the time series represented by the CRP weighted means compound sentiment grouped by the national lean, with pro-Russia and pro-Ukraine and balance accounts considered separately. To aid interpretation of these time series, the tweet frequency of each type from all accounts and some significant event markers were given. Before the 2nd of March, there was minimal activity from pro-Russian accounts. So the CRP weighted mean compound sentiment estimated as high variance, and this is low quality, being as well within the self-entropy as well. So after the March 3rd, there was a spike in balanced CRP, weighted mean compound sentiment, and balanced accounts, suggested that these accounts were producing more positive tweets overall, potentially in response to humanitarian corridors opening. So we can see here as when these tweets come out, these pro-Ukrainian tweets and these pro-Russian tweets. So Russia captures the first Ukrainian city and we see a spike in pro-Russian tweets. The conflict begins, we see a spike in pro-Ukrainian tweets, as well as trying to gather support from outside. And the balanced tweets have been fairly similar throughout. These are very interesting as well, and you've probably done these at school with books or whatever from this. So Figure 7C, which is this figure here, shows that the most of the discussion around work is involved with governing bodies, with president and governments being the most commonly used words, while it is difficult to assert exactly what these bots are driving more discussions from work. So if we look here, the main ones are government, president, bank, assistance, things like this. But we look at number B, we look at moving, stay, go, fall. So we're looking at move away, stay, fly, fall, things like this. And number A, which is the angst category, shame, terrorist, terror, desperate, panic. And these are the way these bots across from the most pro-Ukraine to the most pro-Russian bot influence the behavior online. They're terrorists. You should stay at home. You should leave. You should flee your president. Things like this. Combining these two observations suggests that self-declared bots drive more angst about governing bodies. From a pro-Russian perspective, this may be to cause more disruption in the West, and from a pro-Ukrainian perspective, this may be to more cause disruption in Russia. It is worth noting that we considered predominantly English accounts. It is therefore more likely that the intention of these accounts was to drive more disruption in English-speaking countries, which could align with the timeframes of when these are active as well. We argue that self-declared fake followers, spam, and other forms of automated account types combine the increased fear in the overall discussion from the Russia-Ukrainian war. Now, this is from Figure 7A. So here we have Figure 7A. Now, in Figure 7B, the middle one here, we see a number of motion-related words that are potentially associated with staying or fleeing the country. Combining with this increases in angst suggests that bots could be influencing people's decisions surrounding whether to flee their homes or stay. Druzwick noted that bots have allowed Ukrainians to report to the government when they spot Russian troops, but the usage of bots to influence people on staying or leaving the country is something not observed before. However, it is difficult to note whether this is being done to support Ukraine, Russia, or both. So these actually don't give across this a clear picture of this supporting Ukraine, Russia, or a balance of both amongst this. Now, this is in conclusion of this. This work investigates if and how bot-like accounts influence the online conversation around the Russian invasion of Ukraine during February 22, so very early in the war. And we will see these bots pick up again through major events. Right now, we're seeing a lot of that because we're in a major event on the absolute eve of some point of Ukrainians' counteroffensive. And we've also seen this when Russia launched their winter offensive as well, which was failure in all but some very small parts. So we showed which account groups have measurable influence by aggregating accounts using their national lean and account bot type label. The patterns of information flows between bot and non-bot accounts varied based on their national lean. Pro-Russian non-bot accounts are the most influential overall. We've said this before, the Russian propaganda, these Russian bot accounts can be very influential. They can have a lot of push onto people as well. So we see a lot of people changing opinions on this war. but with significant flows from pro-Ukrainian bot accounts into pro-Ukrainian non-bot accounts. Pro-Ukrainian aggregated groups also tend to have higher self-entropy rates. Self-entropy measures of uncertainty or information. The relationship between the sentiment of bot activity is significant but occurs in both directions. Self-declared bots have the largest impact, showing significant relationships with the word in the function: angst, friend, motion, time, work, and filler categories. Self-declared bots show the strongest relationships with work discussions, words pertaining governing bodies, president, government, leadership. We also see bot accounts increase the use of words in angst category, which contains fear and worry, shame, terrorist, threat, and panic. And I have all of these tables available here as well. So I'll put that down below of how to actually access this full thing. But the reason I talk about this, the reason we've got this, is to break down and talk about how things online which are out of our control are influencing our behaviors, how we see this, what we can see, what is available for us to see, and everything from there on. I know this video was very long and very just breaking things down, reading things off the screen, and bit shitty slideshow, but it's something that I wanted to talk about and that is important to me. So if you'd like to support me, links down below. I go and have a look at this stuff. Always reach out, try and be as unbiased as possible. Get your information from multiple sources. Never trust a singular source, not to have some malicious intent behind it. But legends, look after yourself. Keep doing your research. Keep being legends. Look after yourselves. I'll see you soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.